Here in the Mojave Desert, animals have had millions of years to adapt to the harsh environment. But the lizard? He's going to die.
The desert, a dangerous and fantastical place understandably inspiring the filmmakers of Rango. But despite the grueling heat, vicious predators, and lack of water, the desert is full of life. As many different kinds of desert as there are, there's different kinds of animals. My name's Donald Schultz, and with the help of experts and the filmmakers of Rango, I'm going to introduce you to as many of the animals as possible. Come on, there's no time to lose.
Or I could be the rogue anthropologist battling pythons down in the Congo.
There's something spiritual about the desert. I've always felt that way, walking through the desert.
There's a kind of beauty to this, a very dry place.
You first approach it, and it seems like it's just death. I mean, it seems like there's nothing living. You know, you slowly adjust, and you start to perceive all sorts of life.
Well, we knew that we were referencing certain animals from the desert because we really had to populate this world, and I think they have personalities built into them that we kind of enhanced.
What are you old goping at?
We're blurring that line between reality and fantasy.
So have a look at this guy. This is a 9-banded armadillo, or Dasypus novum cinctus, and that's all about the business on its back, which is this heavily armored area. And against predators and heat, sometimes the best offense is a good defense, and that's exactly what this guy has. He has a hard shell on the outside over here, and the name 9-banded armadillo is not exactly correct. Now, they can have anywhere from 8 to 11 bands on their back, but 8 to 11 banded armadillo just isn't as catchy. The only soft parts in an armadillo is its underbelly over there. Some armadillos will burrow into the ground for defense, some of them will roll up into a ball, and some of them will just hide. They run around and defend themselves and hunt with these incredibly sharp claws. And what they'll do is they'll dig up things like snakes and lizards to eat. Most of the time, they're eating things like bugs and insects. Speaking of insects, I'm going to try and find out some dangerous and deadly bugs.
I will see you on the other side.
So I found it's a pretty dangerous animal, but they're very misunderstood and feared by humans. Out of over 1,000 species, there's only 25 that can kill human beings. We cool? Check this out. It's a little desert scorpion. Oh, look at that. And basically, if you look at this guy, he has those pinchers on the front, tail on the back that he uses to introduce venom, kill the animal, and then eat them. A general rule of thumb with scorpions is the bigger the tail and the smaller the pinchers, the more toxic the scorpion is. But if you don't know what you're doing with scorpions, you should always leave them alone. Scorpions like this have been on the earth for about 400 million years and running around with very little change to them. And even though this guy looks pretty scary, he's not really that bad. I'm gonna let him chill out over here because they like coming out at night. Make his little house around.
When you're talking about deserts, there is a lot of cool stuff to find, but a lot of it is doing the same stuff we would try to do if we were living out in the desert, which is hide ourselves from the middle of the day, heat of the sun. You start to dig in the ground or look under rocks, you get all sorts of cool spiders and scorpions and centipedes. There's all sorts of other wild insects flying around, not to mention a lot of the cool reptiles and amphibians that live out there as well.
Reptiles, gotta stick together, right, my brother?
I'm an amphibian.
Ain't no shame in that.
Okay, quick pop quiz. Both of these are called toads, but one of them's a lizard and the other one's an amphibian. Any ideas? This is a horned toad or horned lizard, and this is just a toad. Now, you wouldn't think you'd find an amphibian in the desert, but these guys are really, really smart. They only come out when it's rainy or wet. When it's hot like this, they'll burrow under the ground. Now, the horned lizard or horned toad gets its name because it has that pudgy appearance, the rounded nose, and if you look at its body shape, it's almost identical to a toad, but it's not a toad at all. It's in fact a lizard. And what these guys do is when they're scared, they'll make themselves almost twice the size and blow themselves up. And if you look, those spikes on the back of his neck, even though they look really toxic and dangerous, are actually not that bad at all.
The horned toad lizard, many people call them the horny toad lizard, they are able to restrict blood flow into the eye, so eventually the eye bursts and blood shoots straight into its attacker with uncanny accuracy.
What exactly are we gonna do now?
Snake, come look here. Oh, but just be careful. I was hoping we'd see one of these guys. This is the most toxic snake in North America. Have a listen to that rattle. He's got that rattlesnake defense, but as soon as you stop moving, he starts rattling. And the reason is he's got these incredible heat-sensing pits on either side of his face, and he can see my heat signature. So as soon as I do that, he's smelling, he's seeing, he's sensing everything that's going on. Rattlesnake Jake is a sharpshooter in the movie, and that's very accurate because rattlesnakes strike so fast, it's faster than the human eye. They can complete the entire strike in 1/24 of a second. Let me show you this guy. Look at that. And these are sometimes called diamondback rattlesnakes or southern Pacific rattlesnakes. And you can see what he's doing is he's telling me to leave him alone. He's saying, get out of here or you're gonna get bitten. And with rattlesnakes that are that's toxic, they have venom, but it's not limitless. They can't just waste it on anything. So he's gonna try and make me get away from him. And the last thing he'll do is strike. And that strike is easily enough to kill an adult human being. People who get bitten by these snakes sometimes stop breathing, have to go on ventilators and die. So if you look here, have a look at this. What makes vipers and adders so unique is the fact that they have these long fangs that they can hinge forward. They basically move them and they attach to elastic cartilage and flick them forward. What this allows is their fangs to go deep into the tissue of the animals that are trying to kill them or they're trying to eat. And this allows the venom to go a lot deeper, act a lot quicker, and they actually have to use less venom. So while this is the most toxic snake in North America, I want to introduce you to his little cousin, which is the smallest rattlesnake in the world. Cheers, little buddy. They're called sidewinders, and you can see why they get that name because of this crazy locomotion strategy that they have, and that's to have as little of their body on the ground as possible because of the blazing heat. They're also called horned rattlesnakes, and the reason for that, let me show you. If you look on top of his little eyes, he's got those perfect little horns, which makes him look like a little devil. The tail is basically made out of keratin, which is the same thing that's in your fingernails, and each time the snake sheds its skin, it gets another little nodule on the end, and you can see there, he shed his skin a lot. These guys are almost white in coloration because they want to reflect as much heat and light as possible. Like most desert animals, rattlesnakes in the desert don't get extremely big because there's not a lot of food, there's not a lot of water, and there's not a lot of things to go around and eat. So these guys are basically staying a lot smaller than their cousins that live in rainforests and other areas. So I'm gonna let this little guy go. And while I do, the filmmakers of Rango are going to tell you some of the inspirations for the characters in the film.
Gore had always had the idea of Rattlesnake Jake being kind of like the Grim Reaper, so to speak.
Hello, brother. Thirsty?
And now I get to play Rattlesnake Jake, and he's pretty scary. I love the way he looks. You know, if you're going to be a snake, and if you're drawn by Crash, you're in good shape.
There are no rules. Sort of creatures of the desert and characters from a Western genre. Let's just see what we can create.
Depending on what one character's personality was, we would pick an animal that kind of suit that character. And other times it was backwards. It's like, well, what would be a scorpion's personality?
The mayor, for instance, had to have been there, you know, for a long time and be wise, and this tortoise came to mind.
But with Bad Bill, it kind of somehow just made sense as a Gila monster. It's just an inherently kind of tough creature. I think that's another aspect of desert animals, is that they endure so much strife living in the desert trying to survive, that they've got to have some sort of defense mechanism or tough exterior. And I think we took that tough exterior and built it into them more so character-wise than aesthetically.
You want to look at the reference material, what the animal looks like, what the animal characteristics in terms of movement and facial expression. But what is the most interesting element, detail of a porcupine is his spike, right? So the combination of the spikes, his outfit and his expression, unless I tell you it's a porcupine, you won't know. It's a completely different thing that hadn't been seen before. You kind of invent, as you go along, you invent every single thing.
Now, I know what you're thinking. You're saying, Donald, why are you so close to that porcupine? Are you incredibly brave or incredibly stupid? The truth of it is, porcupines don't actually shoot their quills. What their quills are just hardened hairs that cover their entire body. Underneath their body, they just have hairs for warmth and heat. When young porcupines or porcupets are born, all the hair is soft, but literally within hours, their hair hardens up to make an incredible defense. What they'll do when you encounter them in the wild is they'll actually take their tail when they get startled, wiggle it from side to side, and get those quills into your flesh, which is incredibly painful. And most people will run away, but I won't, because I'm incredibly brave. And because I'm so brave, I'm gonna let someone else explain the next animal to you.
There is probably no greater fear than that of spiders, at least as with the animals I work with. When you're talking about desert environments, of course, the topic always comes up about tarantulas being out in the desert. The biggest misconception about how nasty tarantulas are is that they're really not nasty at all. So of the 2,000 or so worldwide, there's actually only one that is considered potentially dangerous to people at all. One of the good things about tarantulas is that they're really hard to get up close and personal with because they're living in burrows or they're hiding out in crevices and they don't really want anything to do with a real dangerous animal like you and me. We often think of it erroneously as the other way around, that these spiders are out there to get us. But any fight between you and the next tarantula you see, I'm betting on you every time because one big shoe will do it. In order for a tarantula to even bite you, it actually has to rear up and strike downwards this way when it wants to bite. It actually brings its fangs, which are held back in this way, and has to bring its fangs out like this to actually get a bite to occur in the first place. And the biting parts are under here anyway. In fact, right there, you can see the fangs. And in the same way that a dentist can work on your teeth, I can touch hers too. So I just rub the fangs of the tarantula.
Ooh, you're good.
So while you guys were checking out the tarantula, I've been hanging out with the fennec fox, which is super cool because these guys are normally found in Africa. So even though he's related to wolves and dogs, he's only about the size of a rabbit. And he may be sensitive about his small size, but there's something else to talk about. His big ears. They have these really, really big ears for two reasons. One of them is to hear animals so they can hunt them successfully. The other thing is to cool down. This is basically like a big radiator so they get rid of heat. In the desert where there's not much moisture, for an animal to pant like a dog or a wolf would, they lose out large amounts of moisture. So these guys basically put these big ears up, all the heat goes out of their ears and they cool their body down without losing any moisture. So these are really cool animals, and while they're called prairie dogs, they aren't dogs at all, even though they beg, bark, sit down, and sometimes even bite. And they were called prairie dogs by Lewis and Clark because of the bark that they make. Because prairie dogs live underground, they don't have very good eyesight, but they do live in burrows and are very, very social rodents. They'll actually live in big family groups and have multiple burrows that all join up.
The aesthetic of the world that we're building is very, very specific. And so when I approach it, it's always not what's cute about a gopher. It's how can you dirty him up and grunge him out to make him fit in this kind of rough and tumble Western town.
We decided we were going to really push the level of detail and level of textures and level of heightened realism that comes with these characters, and the way little hairs break up on material and feathers falling and bloodshot eyes and saliva getting caught on the cat's face. All those details combine to make something amazing.
Never mind. There's some big movie stars in Rango, but none quite as big as this guy. In almost every Hollywood movie where you hear a hawk shriek, it's one of these guys, a red-tailed hawk. This guy's absolutely magnificent. It's one of the biggest and most widespread large birds in North America. If we had eyes that big on our head, they'd be the size of tennis balls. That allows him to see prey items from very far away with telescopic vision. Add to that, it's got extremely powerful talons, strong wings to carry away the prey items, and they're extremely successful predators.
They can be a mile up in the air and see prey on the ground. They can swoop down and grab the rodent and then spread their wings and catch the wind like a kite does and soar back up in the air. And that's what we call kiting.
You son of a...
So this is a bobcat, one of the coolest cats in North America, and you can tell it's a bobcat because of its stubby little tail. Unlike lynxes and other felines, they don't have long, slender tails. And just like house cats, they love climbing. They'll climb up trees, use those very powerful claws to ambush animals. And with a spotted pattern like that, they're virtually impossible to see in the right environment. They come out at night, heavily nocturnal, so they sometimes live in close proximity to humans and we don't even know they're around. These cats are extremely well adapted to life all across the United States, not just in the desert. Bobcats play an extremely important part in the ecosystem, hunting rodents and keeping rodent populations down. A part of the food chain, if you will.
Circle of life.
The desert is a place where
Most of the time, getting something to eat is a big deal because the bugs come out all of a sudden in the spring, there's lots to eat, and then they're gone, and you go hungry. So you really want to be able to get a lot to eat when it's available, and you want to stay out of the way of everyone else that's looking for something to eat.
It's sort of an arms race. The prey animal is trying to figure out how to avoid getting eaten, and the predator is trying to figure out the best ways to find that prey.
Now this is an animal you never want to step on. This is a Gila monster, and it's one of the few venomous lizards in the world. It gets the name monster because it has this really toxic venom that introduces through its bottom jaws. In the desert, a bright pink and black defense doesn't work very well unless you're super toxic, and that's what this guy is. If you look at his tongue, he has a forked tongue just like a snake, and basically what he's doing is he's smelling the air to see exactly what's going on. If you look at the lizard, he's got these really big muscles on his jaw, super sharp, razor-sharp teeth, and very, very powerful venom glands on the bottom jaw. And what they do is they bite, they get that venom into animals that are attacking them, and it's extremely painful. Even though it's never killed a human being, I've been bitten by one of these guys, and it was one of the most painful things I've ever experienced. And if you look at him, he's popping up, he's saying, stay away from me, I don't want to bite you, but if I have to, I will. And these guys are really monsters. Really the biggest lizards in North America and one of the coolest lizards in the world. An interesting thing is, if you smell the venom of a Gila monster, it smells just like oranges. I'm not gonna upset him too much more so I don't get bitten on the nose. I'm gonna leave him alone.
You're funny looking.
Oh, yeah? You're funny looking too.
That's a funny looking shirt.
It's a funny looking dress.
You got funny looking eyes.
You got a funny looking face.
Priscilla's quick to call others funny looking, but she represents one of the strangest looking creatures on our planet. She's not from the desert or the United States at all. They're from a little island off of Africa called Madagascar. Now, the interesting thing about eye-eyes is they're a type of lemur, a weird little monkey thing that occurs on these islands. And locals are so superstitious about them that when they see eye-eyes near them, they'll often pack up their houses and leave. Eye-eyes get their name from travelers that would go to Madagascar, see them, and for the first time be so shocked, say, aye-aye.
Crash went and did the research and found the eye and sort of modeled it on the eye, which doesn't really belong in this particular desert. But, you know, I think we're going character, 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 and then just bringing things to that. Noses from this creature, tails from that creature, whatever we want.
I am trying to save my daddy's ranch, which is on the verge of an agricultural meltdown while you're playing patty cake with this here trollop.
Such a drab little thing.
Why does she do that?
The freeze, the kind of you can't see me, I'm perfectly still attribute was something we applied to Beans. Also just wanted her to be a little neurotic.
I've actually seen lizards freeze myself. As a kid, I used to sort of try to catch lizards, and apparently they freeze because they're accepting sunlight. They need sort of vitamin D, and so they freeze to get sunlight, and then they're able to be re-energized and carry on their way.
You were frozen.
No, I wouldn't.
Yes, you were. You stopped talking.
Well, it's a defense mechanism. Actually, lots of lizards have it.
You're making that up.
Meet real-life beans. Well, little bits of beans. The filmmakers took quintessential elements of desert lizards, like this chuckwalla and this savanna monitor from Africa, and rolled them into one character of Beans. In the desert, some defense mechanisms include attack, screaming, hiding, and sometimes animals will even drop their tails in self-defense. This is a desert chuckwalla, and one of the defense mechanisms that these guys do is they actually stick themselves in rock cracks just like these over here, and when animals try and eat them, they'll inflate their body like little balloons so they can't be pulled out. And this savanna monitor, as you can see, is a big boisterous lizard. What they'll do is defend themselves by hissing. Sometimes they'll tail whip, they'll run, and even bite with those very, very sharp, razor-sharp teeth. Look at that, he's just mad. And when they get hot, they sometimes get cranky and start moving a lot faster. As you can see, this kid's trying to get away, and that's one of the defenses that these monitors will do. It actually uses its tail like a fifth limb and is whipping to try and defend itself. And what this does, it doesn't have to use a lot of energy, but when they do warm up, they're able to get a very fast run, and they can actually run faster than human beings. Water is hard to come by in the town of Dirt, but a lot of desert lizards don't need a lot of moisture because they get all the moisture that they need from the food that they eat. There's one lizard you don't want to tell about this because he's trying to fix the water shortage in the town of Dirt. You know who I'm talking about.
Hola.
Rango is somebody who can be anything but doesn't know who he is, so the chameleon was the obvious choice. I think also aquatic chameleon was really important, that he's, you know, he can't survive in the desert.
I always had some kind of affinity and semi-fascination for reptiles. And the fact that he's a lizard attempting to adapt to his surroundings and assume these characters and to be accepted is very, very fitting, you know.
Blend in. Yeah, blend in.
One of the things that you might have noticed about Rango and chameleons in general is they don't like stress very much. Now, Rango is more like a flapneck chameleon, but this is a panther chameleon from Madagascar. Some of the differences are these are extremely brightly colored and a lot larger than most chameleon species. They change their color by changing the millions of little cells inside their skin, and usually this reflects their mood. So when a chameleon gets startled, he'll get these bright colorations, his mouth will open up, he'll get all aggressive and try and ward off predators because they really have no defense other than their coloration.
What are you doing? I'm blending. Go blend somewhere else.
Don't distract me.
No room at the inn.
It's an art, not a science.
A couple other things to note about a chameleon is the ability to use its tail as a fifth limb. This is what's called a prehensile tail, and they'll often hang from their tail and reach hard-to-reach branches like that. The other thing that they can do is move their eyes independently. And what this does is gives them binocular vision, and they can judge very accurately how far an animal is away from them that they want to eat. And they're also known as the sharpshooters of the animal kingdom. They hit prey items up to 2 times their body length away, reel them back in, and crunch them up with those razor-sharp teeth. That could be why chameleon means little lion, but it could also be because they're so brave and valiant.
Ain't no one gonna tango with the Rango.
We're out of time. There's literally hundreds of animals I wasn't able to show you. Hopefully this little look at the creatures that inhabit the town of Dirt has shown you exactly how exciting and fascinating the creatures that inspire the characters can be. My name's Donald Schultz, and until next time.
Remember this moment. Remember me.